And there we go. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the wasmCloud community meeting for Wednesday, October 18th. We've got an agenda that's going to update here actually in a second. We got a couple of things that we're adding and moving around. We're going to start with a little bit of a demo on wash build and talk about how we're progressing to get wash build to work fully with WASI Preview 2 components. We're going to talk about community growth, wasmVert, which will be at the end of this call, and then have some hopefully quick, but just time for questions, discussions around moving more and more of our crates into wasmCloud, and what we mean when we officially accept an ADR, because I think there's a little ambiguity there around stuff in the wasmCloud ecosystem. So I am just sharing my browser, I think. So let me go ahead and share VS Code with, I'm sorry, Yordis is somewhere getting blinded by my light theme. I forget to turn that off when we do community calls. So this should be nice and good. So I want to talk a little bit about wash build. If you have worked with building WebAssembly things in wasmCloud, you've probably used wash build to do it. And right when wash build started out, it started as essentially a nice light wrapper around the local tool chain that you use to build projects and compile them to WebAssembly. So for if you're building a Rust project and trying to compile it to a WebAssembly module and then sign it so that it can be a wasmCloud actor and you can run it within wasmCloud, you can either do something like run cargo, build, target, wasm. I won't try to remember the thing off the top of my head while I'm talking. And then you can use wash to sign the module with the appropriate capability claims. Or you can use wash build, which uses your underlying cargo toolchain, just what it finds in your path, compiles it for WebAssembly, and then we'll sign it based on the information that you would normally provide in either in the claims sign CLI, or now we actually take that information in through the wasmCloud.toml file. So wash build started as a way to just kind of loosely wrap the local tool chain and sign your module. So you can just one command, build it, sign it, call it done. And it also allowed us to have one command no matter what language you're working in. Now, I know that this is something that we say often, and what we really mean at this time is building either a Rust component or a TinyGo component. You can go into either of those projects, run wash build, get WebAssembly module, and then run from there. And we do that by having a wasmCloud.toml file, which has information about the project, what language it's written in, the fact that it's an actor, and then all of the information that it needs to sign with the right capability claims. And this may be all kind of old news for folks who've been working in wasmCloud for a little bit, but it's just kind of nice to have some background, because I want to talk a little bit more about some of the changes that we've added into wash build, some of the cool things that it can do, and really talk about WebAssembly components. So you'll notice if you go and look at the code for wash build, you can actually, there's really robust documentation now on the wasmCloud homepage or on the wasmCloud documentation site. You can search for wash build or wasmCloud.toml, and you can get the information on the fields that you can supply there. But we've had support for this wasm target field under actor for a little while. So you had a couple of options. Originally, our actors, and what we did for a long time, is compile them to wasm32 unknown. And this is like a full standalone WebAssembly module that doesn't necessarily use WASI or doesn't use WASI APIs, because that's what we do with the stable API. We don't use WASI APIs to communicate over the guest host boundary. Now, we also had support for wasm32 WASI. So you can use WASI APIs in wasmCloud actors, things like WASI logging, interacting or grabbing the system time over it's WASI clocks, things like that. And we also now have support for wasm32, WASI, Preview 2. And eventually, I think that this will become the default so that you don't even have to specify this, but this is a WebAssembly component. wasm32, WASI, Preview 2 is a WASM component. Now, when you specify that you're going to be compiling to a WebAssembly component, there are a couple of steps that happen here. Right now, many language toolchains, actually maybe no language toolchain, has direct support for compiling straight to a WASI Preview 2 component. What you essentially do is you compile the WebAssembly module. You compile to WebAssembly with WASI Preview 1 APIs. So just like what you were using for wasm32 WASI. And then you use what's called an adapter to adapt the WASI Preview 1 module to a WASI Preview 2 component. And this essentially just changes the APIs, the ABI that you communicate with the host to be the types, the imports and exports that the component model uses. And then we write that file out to disk. So you can do this adapting step. Basically, anytime you bring a Preview 1 module or component, it can be written in any source language. You have to adapt it to WASI Preview 2 to use the right APIs, and then you can run that as a WebAssembly component. So you can do this directly, and I think actually the example that I wanted to show today may include sorry, let me see if I can pull this up. What I really wanted to emphasize here is that what I'm about to show is just kind of a wrapping of steps with the regular WASM tools. So I can't find the exact one right now, but I'll try and pull it up afterwards. When you have a WASI Preview 2 target, what we do is we build the WebAssembly module and then adapt it to WASI Preview 2. And this actually is in WASH right now. And I say that with a really heavy, orange caution caveat that there are a lot of ways that you can stub your toes in building WASI Preview 2 components right now and running WASI Preview 2 components right now. And this isn't just a wasmCloud thing, but I think today would be a really great time to talk about that and show you kind of what this looks like. So if you go into the wasmCloud examples repo, there is an actor example called KBCounter wasmcon 2023. So right when we got all of our nice WIT interfaces and APIs lined up to deploy it for wasmcon and to show off there, we created this example. Now, if you run, let me show you, if I use this version of WASH, this is the version of WASH that we used at the time, which was version 20. I can run WASH build with this component, and it outputs a WASI Preview 2 component. So if I use, let's start with WASH inspect to take a look at this. Whoa, I forgot that I copied the whole thing. If we use WASH inspect to take a look at this component, you can see that we pull out essentially the inner claims JWT. This is all information that's wasmCloud specific. WASH build does go through and sign that. And you can use the tools like wasm tools to say, hey, wasm tools component WIT, and we can output the WIT that was used to build this component or kind of the contract that this component expects. So whenever you go to run this WebAssembly component in a host, whether it's wasmCloud or just wasmtime or any other host, you can see these are all the imports and exports that we expect. So nothing wasmCloud specific. So it definitely will, work in a host that's not just wasmCloud. But this contract, all these imports and exports are a strict set of imports and exports. The host has to have these, and it has to be the same type that the module or the component is expecting in order for you to run it and then execute the WebAssembly module. So again, if I use wasmCloud 0.20, WASH 0.20, and I run the host, then what I can do is take a look at the we can use a nice little helper script in this repo to just run the actor. We can execute this component on the host. And then I'm going to do something a little bit lazy. I'm just going to start just the HTTP server and curl it. I'm not setting up the key value store, so I expect this to fail. But you can see that we've actually instantiated this component, and it did a little bit of work, namely trying to reach out to a key value store and then failing and then giving us an error. All good, great. We used wash 0.20. We built this example, and it worked. So when we talk about having WASI Preview 2 or component support for wasmCloud and wash build, I want to be super clear that we are essentially playing a game of lining up all of our WIT interface definitions and the tooling and the underlying engine that is going to run this WebAssembly module on the same versions. So the way that we adapt the WASI Preview 1 module, the wasmTime version that's running under wasmCloud, and the tooling that we use, or the WIT definitions that we use in the component itself, all have to match up exactly for these things to run. And if they don't, if I, for example, use the current version of Wash to build this example, we get an error trying to match up the export WASI HTTP incoming handler, with the current definition, which is different. Now, I know that this may not make sense as a demo. Actually, if I run just build, it gives a slightly better piece of information that we're using a version of Wash newer than v0.20. So when we talk about having exact support for components and building WASI Preview 2 things in wasmCloud, it is all with a big asterisk of these versions must match up in order for these things to work appropriately. So the reasons why I wanted to demo this today is because it's not just something that we see in the wasmCloud ecosystem. Things are changing really rapidly in the development of WASI Preview 2. And because it's not stable yet officially, they have, the people working on the standards have room to make, breaking changes and to make things better. And that's all a great thing. It's all good to get the breaking changes done now. But what we're working towards as we kind of incrementally support newer and newer versions is that when the WIT definitions, when the component interaction and the adapter is all a stable version, then we basically get to offer this nice guarantee that as you move forward with future versions of wasmCloud, you don't have to rebuild your WebAssembly component to make sure it fits the right API. Right now, we and anyone else building on top of WASI Preview 2 don't quite have that yet. It's not necessarily saying that it's going to break all the time, but as you can see here, we need to update our component adapter for this specific example. And then I think it would run just fine using the latest version of wasmTime. So this is something, it's a little different than we normally do, I think, but I wanted to show this because it's really exciting progress, being able to use wash build to run the cargo build and then the wasm tools component adapter step, and then sign it with wash build as we do normally. And it works the same with TinyGo, Rust, and then as we start adding more and more languages with the component model, it's all kind of get WASI Preview 1 component, adapt it, go from there. So it's really exciting, and I want to show you all how to do it with the knowledge that things are really rapidly shifting in the component space right now, which is why we still have complete support for what we call the stable ABI. And interacting with the wasmCloud way, over the guest host boundary. Hey, audience plant or not, Taylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to call out, the cool thing about this is, yes, we want to emphasize what Brooke said, it's very broken. with the different versions that keep bumping. So like you're going to be in new territory if you do it, but also this means as soon as we get to a stable state, which is WASI preview 2, it means that wash build will be one of the easiest ways out there to actually build a component. So like even right now, as long as you have all the stars aligned, it is the easiest way to build a component. But we're working on, that's the part that Brooke said is the part that's in flight, that the WebAssembly community is working on to get to the place that it needs to be. But once it gets to that place, we're going to have like one of the easier ways out there to actually build a component, because it's just building a component for you and then getting it ready to like and signing it for wasmCloud. So just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it'll be really useful for some of these examples to try and get, in READMEs. We can put the little like nice warning under construction thing there. But, get it in READMEs and say, hey, we built and ran this with Wash version 0.20 that has wasmCloud version 0.78, things like that, just to be ultra clear about where we're at this point. The really cool thing is that it works, and anybody is obviously welcome to try it. I just want, I think at this point, it's really just important to be clear about how this, how this interaction works. When you move from, major version of WASM time to the next, sometimes things can be breaking, and you can see that. So we had a question in the chat to look at the source code. Just let me pull that up really quick. Not that, this. So the actual source code for the component, and this is the same link that was in the chat earlier, the KB counter wasmCon 2023. So what this actually looks like, at the top, we're using the WIP-BindGen library to generate our interfaces, the KB counter world, and exporting the WASI HTTP incoming handler function. And we've got some imports and all of that. That's pretty standard stuff. What this looks like when you're writing the component is implementing a standard guest for KB counter. It has one function, which has an incoming request and then a response that we write out to. So we receive this request, do the things to increment the value in the key value store. And then, whether it's an error or a success, which we'll probably see a little bit later, 200, there we go. We can write the response out to this. So this is pretty cut and dry, straight up Rust code to write for WebAssembly components. It's working with wasmCloud, but there's not any wasmCloud specific SDKs. It's using this nice little WIT file where the KB counter world requires, I actually think this is a lie, requires WASI key value read write and atomic, and then we export the incoming handler.
It is a lie in that we don't yet implement all of the interfaces because we've added backwards compatibility between what you try to do in the Smithy and you know what, Jordan, I totally disagree. And also super shout out to Jordan because he wrote basically this demo. I know Victor has also done a ton of stuff. He added a lot of the wash build pieces. It's we do have batch. Wait, Victor, do you mind coming off mute and explaining?
Yeah, I was going to say read write and atomic are used, right? Like the interfaces that are being.
Am I the only one who's hearing Victor like he's yelling from 100 feet away?
You are far away. It's the batch one, right, Victor? That we don't have implemented.
Yeah. The interfaces that are there are implemented, like, or are usable, and they're being used by the component, right? So like read write and atomic are in there, right? So there's a lot to key value, and so like not everything is implemented across all of it, but we do have the stuff that's in there, right? Those interfaces. So like that example is self-contained.
Great. Okay, cool. Wrong there. Got another question here, Brooks.
Yep. Let me find it. that is not something that is, where is it? Write HTTP response. That is a function that we have in here. It's just like a simpler abstraction around using or like actually writing out to the outgoing stream, the HTTP body. What we did before with the wasmCloud SDK, where you essentially like return an HTTP response object. I can see us getting a lot closer to that. A lot closer to that with resources and just some actual work to kind of, what's the right word for this? SDK-ify this. It's really important that we don't use wasmCloud specific SDKs and that you don't build specific things into your exact actor. But we're going to be looking for opportunities to simplify things like this, because when I write a little fuzzy style handler for an HTTP response, I don't want to deal with the primitives of writing to streams. I want to return an HTTP response for, I would be happy to call like a function handler to like write an HTTP response to a stream. But this is all kind of work in progress stuff. Okay. Any other questions? All right. I think it'll be really important for us to continue to do updates like this in the community calls. I find it fascinating as we track the latest, because we're kind of always on top of the rapidly changing parts of WASI Preview 2 as things keep getting better and better. So I want to keep working on these things. I want to keep trying to put these examples into publicly accessible places where people can try them out. And I really am interested in just having nice, candid discussion about like, look at how awesome this is, and don't like expect to have to change things a little bit as like going forward in the future with components. So it's all good stuff. All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and move on. Took up a solid chunk of the call, which hopefully was pretty useful. And we'll get on to some other discussions. Did this work? Hey, nice. So we posted in the community call the other day, but wasmCloud actually underwent, and we worked together with the OSTIF folks and Trail of Bits, went through a security audit. Sorry, there's no dark mode on here. I had no control over this. So essentially this involved going through over a 6-week period, going through the wasmCloud, Elixir, and Rust code bases, working with our fundamentals of deny by default security, the way that we have defense in depth and documented on our site, our capability providers, our underlying libraries like wascap, inkeys, things like that. And I find the TLDR is essentially right here, that wasmCloud is a well-reviewed project with lots of diligence in its security posture. This is paid off as evidenced by this audit, which had no severe or high issues to resolve. So this is like a huge round of applause to everybody who has contributed to the wasmCloud project, worked on the security aspects of it. I want to give a special hand and thanks to Kevin, who, the founder of wasmCloud. So many of the fundamentals of deny by default, the capability driven model, the way that we are validating cluster issuers and using in keys, the ed 25519 keys. These are all architecture decisions that effectively predate wasmCloud as it is today. So the Trail of Bits folks were really impressed with the level of detail that we've gone into with security. You can take a look at the full report here on this website, including all of the findings that they did have, which I'm actually super happy to show. Like, all of them are either low severity, or I think it was info level or undetermined, but like info level. And if you look at the end of the security assessment, I know I'm scrolling around quickly, you can find I think it's called the fix review. You can see that all of these vulnerabilities have actually already been resolved and released as patch versions, so they aren't present anymore. So a huge round of applause to everybody who's worked on this stuff, because we have basically knocked the ball out of the park on security, which is great. This is really exciting to have and have an independent third party go through. So thank you so much to OSTIF and the Trail of Bits folks. Thank you so much to the CNCF for sponsoring the security audit of wasmCloud. It's a huge confidence booster to have in our back pocket that we've been doing the right things, and we got some good results out of it. I'm resisting the urge to click on Kevin's latest link. Bailey, hand up.
Yeah, I was one thing I wanted to call out is that it puts us in a really great position for our incubation application. But not just that, like we've basically knocked everything out of the park for incubation requirements. And we're like, this is one of the things that we would need for graduated. And so we're really well set up to even keep moving up that ladder within the CNCF.
Oh yeah. And I will be talking about that as soon as I get to it. Anybody have questions on the security audit? There's not really any action items here. I just wanted to share it out because it was it's a big deal. All right. True. So the next item on the discussion list, we have mulled over it at least 5 times in community calls before, talking about the organization of the wasmCloud org on GitHub. So taking a look at the org, nice Reddit, we have talked a couple of times about the amount of repositories that we have in wasmCloud. My number is probably bigger than your number because we've got some old like private archived ones, but we have many repositories in the wasmCloud organization. And the pins are super nice for organizing these kind of things. But for some aspects of developing things in wasmCloud, we've noticed a pretty significant amount of friction with rapidly iterating across multiple of these repositories. I'll give you an example. I was working over the last 2 weeks on pushing out and change to the wasmCloud control interface. Find that here. Thank you, GitHub, to the control interface client. And in doing so, changing this crate, I needed to make an update in, I guess I technically should update in our capability providers repo. I had to update Wadum to use the new control interface. I had to update wasmCloud to use the new control interface. And I had to update Wash to use the new control interface. Technically, we'll also probably update some types in wasmCloud OTP too. So this isn't like I would have to change all these components normally, but if we had the control interface as a crate under the wasmCloud repository, and then projects like the host, and we had wash lib and wash CLI in this crates folder as well, I can essentially put in one pull request and have all of the updates at the same time, and then we can release those crates independently from there and test it all in the same chunk of work. Now, I know that there are various arguments for and against monorepos, and I don't want to get anybody into a swirl from this, but what I want to call out as a couple of things that we're going to be doing. We're going to push more of our interdependent crates that have a primary consumer as wasmCloud into the wasmCloud crates directory. This is going to be really important for changing, essentially the host and the crate at the same time. And Connor just put in a PR yesterday. It looks like Roman put in a PR 28 minutes ago. I see you, Roman, on integrating wascap, where we're going to merge wash into this repository as well. So essentially the tools and crates and tooling that are primarily focused on wasmCloud things are going to slowly migrate into this wasmCloud repository. The primary reasons why are for discoverability. This should be essentially a home page so that you can come to the wasmCloud repo and then do things like run cargo, run example echo, and then it can run our echo example, or use simple scripts or take a look in different folders about what the different parts of the project are. Now, not everything is going to come into wasmCloud. Wadum is an example of something that I think will stay separate from wasmCloud because it's not something that we're always tightly releasing a new version of. However, we do often, when we release a new version of the wasmCloud runtime, we do often increment the version of wash so that you can run that version with wash up, for example. So some projects will still be standalone, but we're going to be trying to push things into this repo where it doesn't hinder our own development. It's really important to, I don't know, Connor wants Wadum in the mono repo. Everything's up for discussion, right? The main thing that we want is discoverability, and we don't want to essentially be distributing our efforts across all these different places and making it hard for ourselves, checking out different repos and all that stuff. So that's really more of just a heads up that we've started on some of that work. Happy to hear any other suggestions. We don't want to add a lot of process around the monorepo. We want to keep it easy to contribute to individual components. And so that's kind of a first class tenet that we're thinking about as we move some of these things. Connor, did you want to argue for Wadum today or not today?
Not today. I'm happy to explain if others want, but I don't feel too strongly. I'll take the wins that I can get.
I don't feel too strongly about it either. Alrighty. Well, then I think that covers that section. And it leads pretty nicely into the next one. I wanted to talk about, we had a question in the community Slack around one of our recent RFCs, which is this one, around host metrics. This is a proposed RFC. Thank you so much, Patrick. And I know that Patrick and Dan and maybe even Connor worked on this, putting this one together around wasmCloud, supporting Prometheus metrics. Now, we also had a lot of questions and back and forth and great discussion around this PR for this RFC. And if we go down kind of the bottom, last month, which, could have been 19 days ago, was the last time. Oh, wait, I can see it. It was a little less than a month ago, was the last time that we commented on here. So we don't really have we have a process around RFCs to propose them and then accept them and then close them. And we don't have an explicit process for moving an RFC from proposed to accepted. I think it's really important to call out that just because an RFC is accepted as something that we want to take on, it doesn't mean that we're taking on the work right away. We may actually, do we have one for that? There is accepted, there's discussion needed. It may be worth defining another status that like, hey, we've accepted this, but we're not, but we're not taking on work yet. Really what I would propose is what we have, when we have an RFC that goes into propose and then goes through a couple rounds of discussion, we essentially, it's up to the person who's filing the RFC to propose that it's accepted I think it would be a great idea for people who are maintainers in the specific project to get essentially get to vote on whether or not it's an accepted RFC. And then as soon as that happens, we can push the RFC onto the wasmCloud roadmap in the appropriate work stage, whether that's now, next, or later. So for example, this host metrics thing, what I'm going to ask Patrick to do, who is not on the call, and this is not any fault of Patrick. I'm kind of we're kind of thinking about this on the maintainer side behind the scenes, is now that we've gone through a couple rounds of discussion, I'm going to ask Patrick to put a comment here at the end of the RFC tagging the people who've been on it and ask if they're ready to, propose that we kind of talk this out and we have a good RFC and that we should accept it. And then really it should just, we could formalize it, we could say something like 2 maintainers have to thumbs up it to make it officially accepted. But I'm just interested in making sure that we are clear about the status of RFCs. I'm not as interested in having a super formal process until that becomes an issue. Does anybody have any thoughts here around processes that they've seen work really well or feel really nice or not work really well?
I think that's a great idea, Brooks. And not because I'm an audience plant. I hadn't heard your proposal. So just to be clear, not a plant. The places where I saw it work well in the Kubernetes space was with KEPs. And it kind of had the same thing. Now it was about maintainers, but they also thought about maintainers from different companies, which might be relevant too for us in a governance model for making architecture level decisions. So I guess that's maybe the one other thing I might add there. And we do something similar in the Bytecode Alliance space as well, where you kind of have a representative delegate that's like, yeah, let's go for it. I think this one doesn't need that level. It doesn't necessarily rise to that. This is like, hey, we should do it like this, but there are a lot of options. And so we just needed to reach consensus across the community, which is where I think we got. So I think there's different levels, right, of where you've got to really drive to consensus. And I know, oh yeah, Taylor's got his hand up. He's probably got a lot of thoughts on this coming from the Helm side too.
Yeah, given where we're at, I don't want to overdo anything, but I do feel like we have a gap between RFCs and ADRs, where you have those like like PEPs and we call it Helm. They were HIPs because we were hip, Helm improvement for us. But like the one thing I worry about voting on and then closing an RFC or saying it's accepted is we don't have a way to like keep it open and visible. And so I feel like we kind of need like we don't even have to call them like WHIP, which would be funny. But like we don't even have to call them that. But I would love to have a place where like, okay, we've talked about everything. This gets turned into a README document that's stored in a repo that shows like where it's at, because I want to be able to say like, okay, here's what we decided, because we are a new enough project that there's going to be plenty of things we decide on, but we don't have enough throughput from between the core maintainers and community contributors to be able to do it all. But we need to be able to keep it visible so people know what we've talked about and what we've decided without having the same sort of like seriousness, I use that with air quotes, of like an ADR. Yeah, and we could co-opt what we have with an ADR right now, like Kevin's suggesting, is actually not a bad idea. We could soften what we consider an ADR and say like have an in progress status, and then that way it's a better way of tracking like when we've accepted RFCs. Because ideally an RFC, at least in the past when I've done it, is like you have comments and then someone will go update the top level big giant initial comment on the issue with the RFC with the new information. Then all you have to do is copy paste it to a README document. So anyway, just a thought. Like I said, I don't want to make it really heavyweight. That's why I was trying to think of something that can be in between, just so I don't want to lose track, but I also want people and lose discoverability because an issue's closed. So I feel like the easiest way to do this would just be to put it into a README, like part of the ADR, and have like an in progress status or something along those lines.
Okay. I like that. Yeah, I know right now what we do is, we essentially have like RFC proposed, and then when we have RFC accepted, like the current process is RFC accepted, then it can be taken on for work, and then when work is complete, you file an ADR and you say, "Hey, I did it," and then we close the original issue. But I mean, we have a status field here for a reason. I think it's a great idea to RFC, accept an RFC and turn it into a README as an ADR that's like in progress. And then the only thing that I want additional to that, which maybe we just find, maybe we can create an issue or an issue milestone, is just a way to display it on our roadmap. I think it would be really nice to have it categorized as now, next, later. And if we start to realize that these lists are getting too large, it means that we're RFCing and accepting more work than we can work on as a community project. So I think we'll figure that out pretty quickly if we start getting too many fun ideas. Yeah, Victor.
Just wanted to check, did we discuss the possibility of having the RFCs live in the repo, right? Like just under like a docs folder kind of deal, and then like maybe like doing the discussion in the pull request for the file itself, right? Like the ADRs are in there, but the RFCs can live in there as well, right? Before they become ADRs, essentially.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know if we've discussed that explicitly. I really like the issue format, whether it's an issue or a pull request, to have a record of discussion and what we've talked about and how things have changed. So I think it would be really important to link to the original RFC and all of our ADRs. I don't have a strict dislike of putting RFCs in the repo. I just want to make sure it's really accessible, that people can file an RFC pretty much at any time just by like opening up an issue, or just like make it really easy to do that. Yeah, Bailey.
I have a question. Do we see RFCs always turning into ADRs? Because I think that's why it's set up the way that it is, and that one is more ephemeral and one is concrete that you keep around. I will say that I like Victor's suggestion, but I would do what I've always done with ADRs in past projects, which was creating the ADR was creating like an RFC, so to speak. Like if it was an architecture level decision, you put it in proposed status as a PR, and then people all commented on that. And that was handy because, you could have multiple people messing around with the text of the proposal. So I liked that flow. But like you said, I do also want to like leave space for, hey, YOLO, I just got an idea. I need somebody to give me some feedback on how to get it going, not necessarily the same level of what I would write as an ADR.
Jordan's bringing up some really good points in the chat, and Jordan, just cut me off if you wanted to speak to them. That GitHub discussions exist. These are things that we can use. I mean, I just kind of saw this. there are RFCs that you can create here, and it's open for the community. This could be, and I didn't set anything up here. I think that this is just the default GitHub discussions, template. This could be a great way to get questions and things sorted out there. To Bailey's point, that not everything that an RFC has to turn into an ADR. It can just be like, I want to implement this thing, and it's not an architecture decision. I mean, I would even argue that some of our current ADRs are not architecture decisions. Okay, well, I don't have an exact great answer for like, moving on from here. I think most of what we've been doing is good. And what I'd like to do, that's pretty cool. It allows for upvotes. What I really like to do here is just try a couple of things. Try proposing that an RFC gets accepted. Let's try creating an ADR and putting it in progress status and then tracking it on the roadmap. But let's not go too crazy here on process for proposing RFCs and what's a proper ADR and things. I mean, I think realistically, the things that we're RFCing are really great ideas, and I would rather us spend time talking about the ideas and then doing them than trying to find the perfect place. So I don't have anything specific that I would vote to change at this time, other than I'll propose that we propose this to be accepted, the host metrics RFC, because this is a good one to bring in. I think we've got some older ones as well that we want to take a look at too. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on because we only have a couple more minutes. Thank you all for the nice discussion there. Bailey, I think I'm throwing this over to you to give a little update on community growth and to talk a little bit about WasmVert. So take it away.
Yeah, I just wanted to celebrate how we've been having more community members make a lot of contributions over the past, I feel like 2 months. It has been a massive uptick. Lots of really great contributions by folks. The other part of the topic here was about wasmVert, which is another community, the Bytecode Alliance community that we participate in, because it's sort of upstream for wasmCloud. And I think it was cool, and it was something that Yordis was interested in last week. I think with the limited time and that we can't like hang out and hash out the coolness of wasmVert with Yordis, that maybe we skip that part. Maybe we just kind of focus on some of our cool wins, and maybe if we have any upvotes for, I'm sorry, I just got distracted by Jordan's point, is that back to our previous topic, Nats.io, Nats server uses discussions for this kind of thing, and then you're able to upvote it. That's a pretty cool feature. And it's kind of relevant to the community side of things. I also wanted to say that we, another call out that Hacktoberfest is not over. Hacktoberfest labels are on a lot of our GitHub issues. So if you search for that, mainly look in Wash. I think that's where all the hotness is right now. Although I guess, when do we think Wash is merging into wasmCloud?
Well, there's a PR open right now. I think it is just preserving the right Git history, and then
Today.
Okay, yeah, does that mean the labels move over?
The labels
in
on issues?
Yes.
I think that has to be done manually.
Okay. Yeah, I was just giving a fun shout out and call to action to check out at least our good first issues and our Hacktoberfest label, because there's still time. I think that's basically it for all of our agenda items. Does anybody have any questions? Open floor. Okay. Then I want to give a final shout out for November 6th for WASM Day. That's in like 2 weeks. Wow, that's soon, right? Yeah, WASM Day is in Chicago. We'll be there. We'll have a wasmCloud booth. So please swing by and come chat. We've got, I'll be showing off wasmCloud with Kate Goldenring as the keynote, actually. So that'll be really fun, talking about how WebAssembly components are really like just a better way to write software for a whole lot of awesome reasons. Brooks, Wait, no, it's Taylor and Dan that I think are the talks during the regular conference. Just a feel. Brooks, what do you talk about your thing?
Wait. Yeah, let's look at we got the schedule. We got the schedule. Let's look at the schedule. Fine.
And CFPs are now open for WasmDay EU, or is that right? Actually, is it just KubeCon EU where the CFPs are open?
It's KubeCon EU.
Okay, I think that's true. Yeah.
Gotta love it. So if you look for wasmCloud, does it come up? Yeah, it does. I'm so excited for this talk. It's Taylor and Dan are going to be talking about orchestrating WebAssembly. Reconciliation loops aren't owned by Kubernetes. It'll be nice and spicy, but this will be a fun talk around WADM. Taylor, feel free to give more comments if you want to. And if not, we can go on to KubeCon in a 2023. I'm going to be giving a talk at the main conference. I always forget what time it is, so I just have to essentially Google myself. But the delivering backends like front ends with WebAssembly, this is going to be kind of like a leveled up talk to what I talked about at WasmCon if you missed it. So this is going to be really fun, just about using NATs and WADM to basically deploy these backends all over the place at these little edge nodes, kind of like how CDN deploys front ends at all these little edge nodes. So this will be really fun. And I'm not in the directly after lunch time slot, so people will be awake. That'll be fun. We have more talks. It's not just the one, I think. Bailey, you said you're giving the keynote.
Yeah, I'm giving the keynote on WasmDay with Fermion, Kate Goldenring. So that'll be fun because we're better together. That's the thing that we've always pushed forward. And one of the cool things that I most appreciate about what Kate's been working on in the Bytecode Alliance is on the component model documentation. That's like a big thing that we really needed.
Yeah.
So I want to, Jordan also pointed out in the chat that you can do GitHub issue list and come up with a crazy hack, maybe some curl bashing. We could come up with an automated way to move these over, but I don't think we have too many that it's not so bad. Maybe we can all pair up once wash merge is over and do it manually together.
Yeah, it'll work just fine. Don't worry about it. Or we can just close all of the old issues and call them done.
That's all fixed now, right?
Yeah, this issue applied to the old wash. We're on the new wash now. All right, we're slipping into our wasmCloud after dark discussion theme. So I think we'll go ahead and call it here. Thank you everyone for coming to the community call today. We'll see you next week for more WASM and wasmCloud and all the fun stuff.